Good morning, DC. How you doing?
Oh, doing great, Martin. How you this morning?
Doing well, doing well. We'll talk a little hoops to get things started. Then we'll transition over to football. It's hard to believe, but Alabama and college football already back underway around the SEC and around the country. But did you have a chance to catch any of the first segment?
I did. I did listen in the first segment. You're talking my basketball language, so yeah, I enjoyed listening.
All right, let's start off. First of all, James put up producer James already put up a poll question for the Gary Harris Show on at Todd1029 on Twitter, and it was asking the question simply this: 4 years in, 4 regular seasons under the way. Under wraps, is the program better, the same, or worse than when Avery took over?
Well, I got a complicated answer for you, Martin, because you know me, I'm a complicated guy. But looking at this, listen to this poll question, I think you got to answer it. You're going to answer it. My answer is going to be, if you want to just quick, straight up answer, Alabama is better off, I think, today than when Avery took over, simply because of what he was left with, what Anthony Grant left him with, and what we have today. But it's a much more complicated answer in there. And if you let me just elaborate on that just a little bit.
Yes.
I believe if you know where I stand on this, I was the only one, I think, that has ever appeared on your show and said this last year when nobody wanted to say it. But the truth is, I told you coming into this year that I thought that because – now, nothing against the guy, because I love the guy.
I know where you go.
Because of Colin Sexton and what he did for Alabama last year, I think Alabama has taken a step back this year. And so I think this year we've taken a step back. And I think the main problem is, and you nailed it on the head in your first segment, I heard Avery nailed it on the head, the problem is a leadership problem. And I think in this age of one and done, I think when you rely on a alpha player who really just willed us to win some of the games that we won down the stretch last year, took the team over, he was the leader of the team. We didn't develop any other leaders. We didn't develop any other point guards. And it showed this year because we have to rely, and nothing against the young man, I think he's a great guy. But we're asking, and I told you all year, we're asking a kid who is 17 years old, who should be playing with other 17-year-olds in high school. We asked him to come out early. He did that. And we have not developed him into the leader over these last 30 games that he needs to be. He's nowhere near where he needs to be in the playing in the SEC in these tough games. He's just not. He's going to make a great basketball player. But because we didn't develop other players, we relied on one player to take us, so to speak, back to the promised land, which he did to the NCAA. I think we're behind, and I think instead of in year 4 here, we took a step back here, where it's going to take another year or two to get where we need to be if we're going to develop this team correctly. Now the next question is can Coach Avery Johnson do that?
Yeah, that's the big question. And you know what? It was kind of interesting. The day we lost to LSU, I told someone this young man should be playing over at the BJCC for his state championship. And we were expecting him. We were expecting him to lead this team to a win against the regular season SEC champion, at least for the time being.
And explain to all your listeners what you mean by that, Martin. It's not that.
Go ahead.
Not that we thought his game should be, but the truth is that is exactly what was happening. He had already resigned the fact to go back to school.
Right.
That's where his mind was thinking.
Right.
We convinced him because of our need. We convinced him to come up to declare early and come in,
right,
and have given his family of that. So yeah, he should have been back over there. But for us being so thin at that position and having no one to step up, we don't have any ball handlers on our team. I mean, we got a lot of players that can dribble the ball, but nobody can really handle the ball like Colin Sexton could.
Yes.
And part of it, go back to that one and done mentality again. People transferred out that could have been handling the ball for us that year because they didn't want to sit behind Colin Sexton. A good case in point is Justin Coleman. You don't go out to Arizona and start and lead a team and be a leader on a team if you don't have some leadership skills, especially when you come in fresh like you did. he did a great job out there if you follow him this year in Arizona. So we had some people on the team. We just couldn't develop them by having the Colin Sexton factors, I call it.
Yeah, and when you look at the leadership factor, Avery saying that he has not developed leadership, he said that Kyra's gonna be that guy this year, which I wonder if that was a Freudian slip where he was saying, I've already resigned this season, because literally we may have one game left and then possibly the NIT, and you're probably not gonna make a huge leap in leadership in one game. I look at the likes of Dazon Ingram, who to me, from a leadership and a ball handling standpoint, isn't any better than he was as a freshman when he stepped on this. He could be a better basketball player, but I'm talking about from a leadership standpoint, from a ball handling standpoint, from a point guard standpoint, even though he's not the starting point guard, that's one of his skill sets that he came to this campus with. To me, he's not any better. You look at some of the other guys. To me, leadership is only measured when it's required. In other words, a bad leader can look like a leader when his team's up by 12 or by 15. But the grit of a leader is determined how they respond when things start going bad and when things start going wrong. And the fact that this team on all but like 3 or 4 games this year had a double-digit lead against every opponent that they lost to, and none of those times they were able to stem that tide, tells me that leadership is a huge, huge gap in this program.
Well, they never had to learn that last year because Colin Sexton was the leader. If you look back going down to those, we had those big leads last year. They were great. We didn't lose them because Colin Sexton didn't let us lose. He individually took that upon himself to take the ball, drive the ball, shoot the free throws, do whatever he had to do to try to win the games at the end of the game. Again, that takes away from all the other freshmen who didn't develop any leadership skills last year. They still don't have them this year. The sophomores don't. And you got a freshman who is hard to develop the leadership in when you're having to teach him basic skills of a college level basketball game. And schemes and that sort of thing. So I think that, again, that we just didn't take advantage last year of developing leaders, and it's showing this year.
Yeah, and I'm going to give Petty a quick shout-out. He seems to be stepping into that gap down the stretch a little bit more, but his shot wasn't falling. So hopefully he can piggyback off that, make the right decision to come back for one more year at least, if not both, and then Kyra continue to improve. But I guess my question to you, DC, is is Avery the guy? Based on what you've seen in 4 years, do you feel Avery is the guy who can develop that leadership gap? Because this team is more talented than it was when when the program's more talented, but the lack of leadership will still get you 17 to 18 wins next year if that's not corrected. Can Avery do it?
Yeah, I guess I'm disappointed in the development of what he's done with the players that he's had. He's definitely got better talent. I guess I'm just disappointed. My disappointment lies in the fact that he's not developed the ones he's got in a way to help them be better men, be better players, be better leaders. And I think that's up in the air. I don't know. Can he do it? He hasn't shown to this point that he can do it. I think he's talking like a coach who wants to come back. Talking like a coach who knows he's got a good team and core to build on and possibly get some better even recruits in there. But there's more things in leadership got to change. We're going to have to get some, we got to make better decisions. Our decision making on offense got to be better scheme. We got to have better big men develop. We got to have a whole different philosophy on strength and conditioning to develop our big men, and we got to work on our free throws. Those are things that do besides leadership that's lacking. And those things can be taught. I'm not sure why free throws haven't been taught. Now let me throw somebody else there. Dante Hall has developed his free throws. Somebody's worked with him. He's done better. But I think he's done that for an individual point to try to play at the next level. I don't know that he's bought into the team leader. I don't see that on him as well either.
DC in the Capstone Report. You're listening to the Blitz on Tide 1029. You can find the DC Capstone Report at dccapstonereport.com. DC, one question before we go to break here. Avery's getting ready to take this team to Nashville for the SEC tournament. What does Alabama need to do in terms of three-point shot for this Ole Miss game? Can they get the victory? And do you see this team responding and winning one or two games in the tournament?
Well, I think in order to win, Alabama can beat Ole Miss. I think we've shown that during the season. We've got to be able to limit our turnovers just like we have in every game. We've got to limit our turnovers. We've got to play a full game. We have to, against Ole Miss, we're going to have to neutralize their shooting with good defense and rebounding. So that's the three things we got to do to beat Ole Miss. I think to get in the tournament at this point, having those three losses down the stretch really hurt us. I don't see us getting in the tournament absent beating Ole Miss. I guess Kentucky, if we beat Ole Miss, that was probably most likely the scenario. We got to win both those games, and I think that's a hard, steep road to hoe to get into the tournament. But so our chances right now, I don't look favorably on us getting in the tournament unless we win two games.
Do you take the NIT bid if it's offered, or do you regroup and restaff and make the changes for next year?
Well, I think you always want to keep playing games. To more games you play, the more chance for improvements you can start teaching toward next year. I look at the NIT as being a consolation place and to build on next year. If Alabama can do that and do it effectively, then to take the game. But also, it could be just a really down, discouraging thing to take a game. Most likely, with that record, would have a game at home. If you were to lose that first game at home, then it may send you in a spiral. So, either way they go, whatever their thinking is, declining the game wouldn't be a bad idea, or taking the game if it's like you still upon it wouldn't be a bad idea.
DC, we're back. We're talking about Nick Saban. It's hard to believe spring practice is here, and Nick Saban comes out and drops a bomb on like, to me, like within the first few minutes of opening his mouth, saying we must get the Alabama factor back. He talks about the Alabama factor, said we have to get it back. Then he uses some words like this: humility, discipline, accountability, responsibility, team first, preparation and practice, thinking about doing what the team needs and what you need to do in the details, all of that. So when you hear Nick Saban say the Alabama factor, what do you think he's trying to communicate to? Really talking to his team, in my opinion, but telling us, what is he trying to communicate?
Well, I thought it was a great way to start the press conference. I really thought it was really big. To me, it was like it came off the top rope. We're going to get it right off the beginning here. And I think he was trying to communicate that to his team. Martin, you and I both know Coach Davis. When he starts speaking in the press conference, he's talking to his team, his coaches, and I think he was trying to get this team together to tell them, hey, we've got to go back and reestablish the Alabama factor. We got to go back to what we do. It's what we do best. And I think by saying that, well, he's admitting, hey, we lost that somewhere last year. We lost that individually. We lost it as a team. And that caused us to get off track, and we need to get back on track. So for him to admit that right off and to go back and talk about individual, use the word humility, talk about individual effort. He talked about fundamentals. He talked about the team, thinking about the team instead of thinking about individuals and outcomes for individuals, which is a distraction to everybody. So I think he pretty much laid it out there for all people to understand, hey, we got off track last year because of some thinking. And we got off track because we weren't a team like we were before, like the Alabama factor. Now, I love him using that term Alabama factor, don't you?
I do, yeah.
We've heard that all over, and it means different things to different people. On our podcast this week, we're going to discuss what is the Bama factor. People talk about it right now when you're going through this NFL combine and looking for the draft. What's the Bama factor in the NFL? We see that all over. We're talking about the teams that want to get Alabama players because of that Bama factor. When you're in recruiting, we talk about the Bama factor. We got the best facilities, the best team, most championships, that Bama factor. But in reality, it all starts with the Coach Saban process and what he believes it takes to be a good team. And you go back to the beginning, and you go back to working together for a common goal, having discipline, as he called it. He used the word discipline several times, which causes you to go out and make good, dependable decisions on the field. But in order to have that, you have to go back to practice, and you got to practice correctly in order to get where you want to be on the field, and focus on your play, and doing your job, and not on the outcome. Now, that gets it way down to the very beginning, which I really think the process that Coach Saban is all about. And I loved it by him coming right off the top of the press conference talking about that.
Yeah, speaking with DC Capstone Report, DC, as you say, he came off the rope with the of course, all of us that used to watch wrestling knows what you're referring to there. But you know, that was the to me the Alabama factor. We got bammered in the championship game where they made us quit. They took all hope. I call it like a boa constrictor, where they just squeeze the life out of you. Every time you exhale, they get tighter. Every time, you know, and I think part of the Bama factor comes down to two things: how you play offense and how you play defense. And after you do all of those other things, it comes down to those two things. And so I'm going to hold that conversation because I want to get to that. But before we get to that, DC, several things he mentioned to me that jumps out at me revolves around selfishness. And when you start talking about humility and thinking of your individual goals versus the team goals and the team first. And I don't know if you heard Todd McShay. He had a press conference. Ryan Fowler, the game, replayed it and was talking about they wanted to move him to. Todd McShay was asked about his likelihood of playing, Jonah Williams' likelihood of moving inside in the pros, and he said, "I know he won't like it, but he could be good at it because of what happened at Alabama. They wanted to move him to center last year." And of course we know that move didn't happen. Well, after a little digging, it came out. Not only did he say he was not going to move, the report is that he not only said that, but it was so adamant that it was to the point that he would even consider transferring. If that doesn't throw a wrench in your philosophy of team first and doing what's best for the team and humbling yourself, what else would? And could that be part of the eroding foundation that Nick Saban was talking about?
Yeah, I think that definitely is a factor. You know, listening to what you come out of the combine and different things around Jonah Williams was that pretty much he was asked to move to center. And I think when Coach Saban asked you to do something, he means for you to do it. And pretty much he said, no, I won't do it, and I'm not going to do it. I think that caused some dissension among the team and the cohesiveness among the offensive line and in that offensive line room. But I just feel like that's a small microcosm of a problem that developed in the leadership of the team. I think that caused more people to think about themselves instead of thinking about the team. And it happened in other areas, not just Jonah Williams, I think, on offense and also on defense.
Yeah, because that's a move that kind of, you look at the cascading effect of that move. Now you end up with having Leatherwood at guard instead of at tackle. You end up having Pierce Baker at center versus guard. Now you end up going into a season where you have, one guy playing the position he did last year. Cotton ended up moving. So it was just kind of that one move kind of cascaded. Flipping that over, or not flipping over, I'm sorry. One more question around that. I also heard similar comments about Najee Harris and his attitude, and that for the second year in a row, reports came out, not necessarily confirmed, but heard it from pretty good sources that he was once again, I guess, letting it slip of the possibility that, hey, I'm not happy, and if I don't get to play more in this national championship game, I may look at taking my skills somewhere else. And so those types of things, to me, is what Nick Saban was addressing right off the bat.
I agree, and it also bled down to younger players. Like we saw Yabi Anoma flirting with the idea of going somewhere else because he didn't get enough playing time. So Coach Saban saw that it wasn't just these older guys making these decisions that hurt the team. It's bleeding over into my other guys now, and they're not buying into the process anymore. And so I think he saw that. He wants to address it right off the bat this time. So I think our emphasis this year, he haven't really told us what our word is or what we're going to go for, but I think it's going to be team and back to the Alabama factor. I think he let us know in this very open press conference we're going to get back to the basics of doing what Alabama does. And we can't concentrate on a team and do the things we do as a team unless you're willing to do the things you need to do as an individual and have humility and put your team first.
Yeah, there was a lot of other things that were said in that press conference, but one of the things I want to get to when we come back on the other side is about the Alabama factor, both offensively and defensively, what that looks like and what Nick Saban is trying to accomplish with the 2019 Crimson Tide and what he hopes to come out of spring practice with. We're having that conversation with DC Capstone Report. You can find it at dccapstonereport.com. Tuesdays, we do it with DC Capstone Report. DC, we were talking earlier, man, it's so much. Well, this conversation, this press conference has had enough meat in it to last all spring. But Nick Saban talking about the Alabama factor. To me, Alabama factor has to do with a stylistic approach in terms of the offensive approach and the defensive approach. Let's quickly get to the defense, and then he said something in the press conference that kind of caught my attention on the offensive side. Can Alabama get this defense back to the point where they play, I call it the boa constrictor type of approach, where we literally suffocate our opponents? Last year we were missing that physical edge, and will we be able to return to that, or is it going to be a couple years in the process?
No, I think we can get there this year. I think Alabama has some players that are going to come in and make some big impacts this spring. You'll see, I think, some of the defensive linemen that can come in and make some impacts. I think we're going to get back to that helmet on a helmet, hat on a hat guy. We're going to play tough defense, stopping the run, getting off the field on third down, things we didn't do last year, especially in that championship game. Couldn't get off the field on third down. Other teams couldn't get off the field on third down. I think we're going to get back to that, where we just suffocate the other team to a point on defense. We just want to make them quit. They don't want to play Alabama. That's why I think Coach Saban was talking about the Alabama factor getting back to. There's time when teams just don't want to play Alabama because of how hard hitting, how tough the defenses are. And I really think we can get back there. I think we got some players coming back from injuries. His report on the injuries seems like everybody, except a couple of guys, are good to go for the spring. So we're talking about Terrell Lewis and Chris Allen, Trayvon Diggs, all coming back, and Jalen Armour-Davis, people like that making some big impacts. And we got some guys on the defensive line that are going to, I think, make some impact. I think we're going to be a little more aggressive this year. I think our style will be a little more aggressive on getting after the quarterback. I think we lost that. We didn't get after the quarterback in the championship game. So I think those are all things that I believe that we're going to take an uptick on defense. It'll be more like an Alabama style. They'll just suffocate the other team to make them quit. I think that's what he means by that.
And how big of a blow was it that we lost, at least for the time being, Ali Cahoe?
Well, I think it's probably a big blow in my opinion. I told you coming into this season that I think the middle linebacker position is a weakness. I think because we didn't develop anyone last year. The only one that got any playing time, although limited, was Ali Cahoe, special teams and some in the games. Outside of Jalen Moody, and Markel Benton stepping up, who's going to be the guy. So I think that's going to be a big factor. I think we were counting on him.
Speaking with DC Capstone Report, DC, Nick Saban said about Sarkisian, and I've heard no one else report this, but and I'm going to dig a little deeper on it on tomorrow, but I want to get your thoughts. Nick Saban said he's going to come in and run what we do, and we'll, like we did with Dable and others, we'll add some of the stuff he's had success. It's Nick Saban saying we're going back to the A.J. McCarron at quarterback, running back down the hill. We still have a little bit of the spread mentality, but did Nick Saban tell us right there that he's expecting to be more of a downhill running team that's not just going to depend on the Tua arm and the big plays from an offensive standpoint?
Yeah, I think he was another thing. That's why I said he suddenly said some things at press conference that really rocked your world. He said, I believe it's like what we've been saying, Martin. We got to get back on offense to who Alabama is to complement our defense, to be that team that just sucks the life out of another team, just breaks their will by gaining that 3 and 5 yards every time we touch the ball, and you can't stop us if you can't get us off the field. And when you least expect it, boom, we hit you for a big play. So I think he wants a team that can control the ball, run the ball, and have big play capabilities. I believe this team is primed for the best offensive production of that Coach Saban has had. I think obviously we've got a team that can run the ball, run it downhill, but we also now have the quarterback and the wide receiver skill set to turn small plays into huge plays. So, I look at Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, and Devontae Smith. Anytime they touch the ball, whether it's a 5-yard pass or a 15, 20-yard pass, they can take it all the way. So those passing plays that set up the Sarkisian offense, which don't look like a big play, can turn into a huge play. So I'm excited about what this offense can be. Going back to more ball control, run the ball, and set up the pass off the run. I think it's going to be great.
I think Tua Tagovailoa will annihilate people off the play action pass. Yeah, I think the play action pass for Tua will be a bigger weapon than the RPO because our running game, in my opinion, will be more effective, more dangerous, and more respected. And then Tua with the play action off of it is going to be – I'm looking forward to seeing Tua put it in the belly and take it deep. DC, tell us real quick when you're going to have that podcast up.
It'll be up later this afternoon. We're going to take a look at our podcast and what you talked about today on your show, the Bama Factor, going a little deeper into that. And we're going to look at offense and defense and what that Bama Factor will translate.
All right, that's DC Capstone Report. You can follow him at DavidCott50, at DavidCott50 on Twitter, DCCapstoneReport.com. Presented by FreelancePictures.com and RollTideBama.com. Have to give a shout-out to a former player, Anthony Smiley, former Alabama player, had a heart transplant yesterday. All went well, praying that it continues to go well, and he has a speedy recovery. Keep him in your prayers. Thanks, DC.
Thank you, Martin. Have a great day.